Yeah, I'll be talking about the remote telescope project that the AAA has. The AAA was my first club, the Amateur Astronomers Association, and because of CAN, I've joined ASTLE, and so it's great to be here to give a presentation. We call this the Gateway Remote Telescope, and briefly what we have are we've got two remote telescopes, one in West Texas and one in Chile. So we've got a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere telescope. And the way I'll just tell you a little bit about how this came about and how this idea came and where we are now. Within the AAA, we've got a pretty active astrophotography group. People say that I'm in charge of it, and I just sort of help facilitate it. We've got an astrophotography Google group, email group that's pretty active. If you sign up for it, you'll be guaranteed at least several emails a week with lots of replies, people sharing photos, but also asking questions and getting lots of answers. So there's a lot of people in the group that know a lot about different types of astrophotography. The kind of photography I do, which I've presented a few times at meetings here, is more wide angles with the landscape, and so a lot of people are doing that. And we've got a pretty sizable group that do the imaging through telescopes of deep sky objects. And so that was basically the group that we were aiming for. And if you go to AAA.org, that's the AAA website, and we've got an astrophotography group page. It tells you just a little bit about what we do, how active we are, and then also it talks a little bit about the Gateway Remote Telescope project that we have. So these are just screenshots of the web pages that you could look at, and this just gives you an idea of the two setups, the two rigs that we have, a description of the telescope, and there's also a link that takes you to a gallery that we have. We've got a Gateway gallery that I'm supposed to be posting a lot of the pictures that people produce. I get a little bit behind, but there's I think the last count there were about 80 photos on there. So that people have done over the past almost 2 years from this project. And to me, they're incredible photos. We've got groupings of the same object that people have processed, and they used different combination of filters, different ways to show the colors. So to me, it's interesting to see the taste of each person, how they view the object, how they view the individual colors, and you see what comes out in these different processes. If you scroll down it's pretty much a vertical format. You just scroll down the page, and if you click on each picture, you get a larger image to look at. And so it's definitely worth looking through the gallery to see the pictures that people have produced. So the timeline of this project, it starts at NEAF, like everything seems to start at NEAF with astronomy groups. In 2023, that was the very first in-person NEAF that they held for 3 years. So it was a good crowd was there, and a lot of AAA members were there, and especially a lot from our astrophotography group. Of course, everybody's interested in looking at the equipment and trying to hold back their credit cards and not spend too much money. Alfredo Villegas was a board member at the time. He's an active member of the astrophotography group. And he came up to me and he said, "What do you think about the AAA having a remote telescope?" And I said, "That's a great idea." He said, "We've got money through dues, donations, and other forms of income. AAA has a good sized bank account." So Alfredo said, "We got the money where the club could give us some seed money to do it. And if we do this right, we get subscriptions to the actual telescope that we do, and then we could try to make it self-sustaining." And I said, "That's great." I said, I don't know anything about how to set up these telescope systems, but we've got a lot of people in the astrophotography group who do. So we started talking at NEAF, and a group of us about kind of kept growing, people having different ideas about it. And so we decided to try to go ahead with the project. And at the time, we were thinking it would take about a year to gather the equipment, all the various things, try to figure out where to put the telescope. There are a lot of, it turns out, there are a lot of these hosting sites around the country and around the world that essentially somebody in a fairly dark sky builds what amounts to a giant shed with a roll-off roof. They put piers into concrete and rent the piers. So you rent the pier for a year, but you got to bring all your equipment. And a few of them you can actually ship equipment and they'll set it up for a fee. But most of them you got to go with your stuff. You got to set it up. For the fee they give you electricity, internet connections, maybe a little bit of maintenance over the year. But you got to maintain your rig. You have to make sure it's hooked up properly. And so any problems really are yours, but it's yours to operate. So it's an amazing idea, and they become more and more popular. The site that we go to, the director there said he's actually considering building a third building. He's got 2 buildings, and he's considering building the third one, which can be expensive, but he says the demand is there where people are coming to him and say, do you have open piers that I can rent? So the interest really is there for this type of astrophotography. So for the next few months, we had formed a committee. We were basically over email and a few Zoom meetings. We were having discussions. What kind of mainly what kind of telescope, what kind of camera, what kind of mount should we have? It turns out 3 of the people in our group had 2 of them had active remote telescope operations. One of them had done one in the past, so they were extremely useful to our group. And we even had people like Steve Bellavia, who had joined the committee, who he said that he'll never use it, but he wants to help everybody out with equipment ideas. So he was donating his expertise with the equipment, and also things like there's other things other than equipment. There's electrical hookups, there's the computer hookups, how you deal with the software. So that was very helpful. And there were several people from the AAA astrophotography group that also they really didn't intend to use it, but they wanted to be part of this whole process to help us set up the remote telescope. So again, we were thinking it'll take us about a year to kind of figure out everybody had a different idea of the telescope, the camera, the mount, things like that. Although it narrowed down fairly quickly to some things. A lot of it was what can we afford? What do you think that we could afford through both the subscriptions, soliciting donations? The AAA is a nonprofit. We're a 501c3, so any donations to AAA are tax deductible, and we could solicit donations that way. And so we were going through all of this. And in July, Alfredo, it was on cloudy nights, and he made contact with another amateur astronomer named John Kasianowicz. He's from the Maryland area, and he had a remote telescope set up in West Texas that he said he was willing he wanted a club to use it. He wasn't using it very much, but he wanted somebody to use it. Otherwise, he'd have to go and take it down. He didn't really want to continue paying the monthly fees for the rental. And so Alfredo talked with him a little bit, and then myself, Alfredo, and we recruited a third member to help us out, Preston Staley, and we talked to him on Zoom and just sort of found out what his background was. A very interesting guy, and he just said that he was willing to let individuals use it, but he was really hoping a club would be interested to actually use his telescope for both club use and outreach, things like that. And we said, well, we would offer this to the entire club. We would have a subscription-based operation, and then we would allow people to use it, have a lot of people access the data. And John said that he would be responsible for maintaining the telescope, which was pretty key, because there is a member that lives in New Mexico. It's about a 6-hour drive, I think, to get to where the telescope is. But we couldn't put the responsibility on him to help maintain it. But John's a really unusual guy. He goes out there at least 2 to 3 times a year to look over he actually has 3 rigs in that site near Fort Davis, Texas. And he loves just sort of setting things up. He actually doesn't use the rigs that much. He lets other people use them. And so he was a great partner to work with. In August, around the same time, another AAA member, Antoine Ribot, who wanted to be involved in the project, he had a small Astrotech 60 millimeter refractor that he said he'd be willing to donate to the AAA for our project. I think he said he had won it at a raffle from a star party, and he didn't really need the use of that small of a telescope. And we said, oh, this is great. We could piggyback it to the bigger telescope, which it turns out the telescope that John was going to let us use was an Astrophysics 175, which is a pretty substantial telescope and a very, very high quality telescope. We can piggyback it on top of that with the camera. We need to buy the camera, and then so we could essentially have 2 telescopes. We decided, since the camera on John's telescope was a mono camera with all the filters, we decided we'd get a one-shot color camera for the smaller telescope, so that people who are just new to the hobby could use the one-shot color camera if they didn't want to deal with the filters and all, which could be very confusing. It's still confusing to me, but at least this was a way where we can get people into the project and using it on a more simplified manner. So in August, we had a list of things. We bought a ZWO 2600 one-shot color camera with all the various accessories that go along with it, and had that shipped out to Antoine's place out in New Mexico. And then Antoine and I met in Texas at the end of August, beginning of September, to install the telescope on John's rig. I met John in Fort Davis, and Antoine met us there the next day. And so we all headed up to the observatory, the Dark Sky Observatory hosting site, and to install it. So here's the, let me see my pointer here. I've lost the mouse. Anyway, you can see.
There. It's on the big screen.
Oh yeah.
It was.
Do I go up? Or did I go down? Oh, I go down. So let's see. There we go. So the Dark Sky Observatory site is in the Davis Mountains here. You can see right here is the McDonald Observatory. So it shares the same sky as McDonald Observatory. So a pretty good sky. This whole region is actually essentially a dark sky preserve that the local governments have designated, and so it's quite a dark area. So here's the actual site is similar to what you've probably seen in pictures, or if you've been to remote telescopes hosting sites. 2 very large structures and the roofs just roll off at dusk and to expose the telescopes. They've got webcams inside where you could see if the roof is open. You can also see the condition of the sky. So that's pretty helpful. This is a view to the south. I'm standing in front of one of the buildings. The director of the observatory, who does a lot of the maintenance there, his name is Preston Starr, S-T-A-R-R. So it's a kind of a appropriate name for the observatory director. He was looking around at the site, and he bought this land specifically for the hosting site. He built a small observatory, which you see in the right-hand corner of that picture, as a test observatory, just to see how the remote conditions would work, how the electricity, the internet would work, and how the photographing of the sky would work. And so this is he's got a completely clear view of the south to the horizon. So it's a great sky there. So here's John and Antoine on the right installing the AT60 onto the mount. And there was actually, we didn't even have to attach it to the telescope, the bigger AP-175. There was the plate on the mount was big enough where we could put the second telescope just side by side. So that worked out pretty well. And you could see the telescope with the ZWO camera, and this is actually a later date, a second trip that I made where we installed this the filter wheel with a couple of filters on it. Once we were able to, we actually had a donation of a filter, and then we bought a second filter and the filter wheel to install. So we at a later trip, John and I had installed that onto the AT60. So it's a pretty robust mount and a great setup. Here's a wider view of the inside of the one shed that we're in, and you can kind of see the setup. It's a great design. Preston had built the piers, and those are sunk into concrete, and then he built a wooden floor essentially around all of the piers. And so as you walk on the wooden floor, none of the wood is attached anywhere to the piers themselves. So everything is pretty stable. As the telescopes are independent of the floor. So that's worked out really well. He also built it a little bit higher than most of the hosting sites that you see, because he said that he gives people dimensions when they set up their telescopes. So a lot of telescopes can point to the zenith and still not hit the ceiling of the roof. So it's a really good safety feature, because he said that way you're kind of assured that no matter what orientation your telescope is, it's not going to be damaged if the roof is opening or closing. So that's nice. Preston's I think a pretty accomplished imager himself, so he really knows the engineering, the background behind what everybody needs. A couple of the trips I had made were when the moon was pretty big, but that makes for a great picture. There's a lot of light on our subject, the telescope. So here's our telescope. The roof's open. There's a few thin clouds which cleared out a few hours later. And so here's the scope under the moonlight. And so let me give you an idea of all of the different particulars. So it's an Astrophysics 175, and it's a 10 micron mount, which is a really pretty sturdy mount. It's I think one of the bigger 10 micron mounts that you could get. So that really makes the whole rig pretty sturdy. A Microline 16200 camera. It's a CCD camera, a mono camera with all the various filters, and we use the Nina software to run it. And let's see. If you're not familiar with Nina, it's essentially a program where you could run a remote telescope. That there's a computer at the telescope, and then that's running a Nina program, and then you essentially log into that computer, can access the computer, and can access the Nina interface, and that helps. That runs everything on the telescope: the mount, the camera, where you're pointing the telescope, anything else that you have on it, guiders, dew heaters, everything. So it's a pretty amazing program. So the second telescope's an Astrotech 60, and then we've got the ZWO 2600 camera, and then a couple of filters on that telescope to help out as well. It's a more wider angle telescope, but then the camera's a pretty large sensor. It's a APS-C size sensor, so it's a pretty big sensor, and so that worked out pretty well. So now that we've got the whole telescope set up, we got to figure out how to run this thing. And having no experience doing that, we spent a couple of months trying to essentially put together the whole program. We were making things up as we were going on, which is, I don't recommend doing that at all. I recommend having a plan. The reason we didn't really have a solid plan is that we figured this would take about a year to go through. And in a matter of a few weeks, we actually realized that we had a telescope and that we could add a second telescope, which we bought. And then we realized now we could start it up. Now people could start using it. And we got to figure out how to get the people to the telescope. And so Preston came up with he says, oh, he runs a nonprofit and he does a lot of public relations with it. And he's really good at social media and getting the word out. He says, we got to have a name for this. We just can't call it the remote telescope. So he came up with Gateway. So we've got Gateway Remote Telescope is the official name for our telescope. But we had to do everything, set up the parameters, things like Preston also from the nonprofit world, he said we should set up tier levels because that's the way things are presented a lot in terms of memberships for different groups. He said that people understand that and that works. We had to set up the payments, guidelines to using the telescope and all this stuff. So this was completely new to me. Alfredo is very good at the imaging part. He knew a lot of technical stuff, so he could help out with that. Preston and I did more of the behind the scenes stuff, setting up the website, setting up guidelines and all that stuff. Nina was set up with the help of Linda Thomas Fowler, who's a friend of John Kasianowicz, and she was really instrumental to getting the whole project going. I think she's a software developer, but she's a whiz at Nina. It's amazing what she knows and what she could do. Extremely helpful in kind of setting up Nina to what we really needed in terms of the remote access. And I mean, it had been running already on John's telescope, but she kind of helped us learn through it. And then she also tutored everybody who was going to operate the telescope directly. And so that was one of our requirements, is that you had to be tutored by Linda in order to operate the telescope, so that we had one person doing the teaching for everybody. And that worked out pretty well. I recommend you look at her website. It's called Linda's Astronomy Adventures.space. She's got an incredible website, and because she helps run John's telescopes and helps maintain them remotely from her home in Maryland. So she also John's got 3 rigs in Fort Davis, Texas, where ours is. And he's got a 4th one that was in Eastern California that he keeps threatening to take down. But I think he likes being there, even though he said it's not really one of the greatest places for astrophotography. So she's pretty busy, I think, maintaining the various telescopes and also helping us whenever we've got questions, which is great. We kind of had this soft opening in the middle of October, so that people were signing on. We started advertising within the AAA and a little bit outside of AAA. People started signing on, and so that people could start to get tutoring from Linda and then go on the actual telescope and start doing some imaging. About half of the people already knew Nina from other remote telescopes that they were involved with, so that was good. So a lot of people kind of knew their way around Nina and could help other people. Initially, as we were setting this up, we also wanted to make sure that it was sort of this collective effort. And so what we decided is that with the various tier levels, we would be collecting the data, collecting images, the calibration frames and all that, but that anybody involved in the project, whatever tier level, you could access all of the data. And so that, so that nobody had images just to themselves. Is that if you were part of the project, then everybody was part of the project. And I think that worked out pretty good. So then November 1st, which is about 5.5 months after mid-April, all of a sudden we had an official remote telescope. It was officially online. And so our membership year of the Gateway runs from November to end of October. And so all of a sudden, we were completely shocked ourselves that we had this remote telescope that was running in West Texas. The other thing that in the agreement that we had with the peer price, which was relatively low, was that we would also pay for an extra set of data from this one of John's other telescopes, which is a Ceravolo 300 telescope, which is a super high-end telescope, and that adds to our database that members can access, and that we don't do any imaging through the Ceravolo. We got about 35 objects that Linda had imaged over the past year or so. And so those are pretty interesting to look at. So I'll show you a few photos. I just wanted to kind of show you a representative of things that people have processed that we've gotten through the both the AP 175 and the AT 60. You could look on the Gateway Gallery just to see a lot more examples of these images, and there's plenty to look at. So you won't really be bored, and you can kind of see the variation that people have. And then this is an image that was taken through the Ceravolo telescope, and all that the data and the calibration files are available for people who join. Forgot to mention that the Dark Sky Observatory is at it's about 6,000 feet in altitude, so pretty good altitude, and the skies above West Texas are usually pretty clear. The one main problem is they often get high winds, so sometimes it could be clear, but the roof is closed because of the wind, so it's more of a safety factor with both blowing sand, I think, but also with the telescopes. But they get quite a number of pretty clear nights and have been able to do some pretty interesting photos. So as we're going on into 2024, meanwhile in the southern hemisphere, Antoine Ribaud, he donated to AT 60. He had told me years ago that he was going to set up a telescope in Chile and do that remotely. And I said, wow, that's great. And he had been showing us some pictures of that. And at some point in the middle of 2024, he said, is the AAA interested in having a southern telescope? He I think wasn't sure he wanted to keep running his remote telescope in Chile and paying the rental fee. And he said, well, we could do the same arrangement we had with John. I'll let you use the telescope. I'll deal with some of the maintenance. You just have to pay the peer fee, and you could use the instrument. And we said, that's great, because then he's also part of the project, so he can use it as well. So his telescope is in a hosting site called Deep Sky Chile, and that's in the Rio Hurtado Valley in Chile. And if some of you might have gone to the eclipse in 2019 in Chile and Argentina, La Serena is a town where a lot of people gathered and then went. Most people, including me, joined groups we went further inland for better weather forecasts. But the eclipse path, I think, went straight through this area. The two peaks that are of interest to astronomers are Cerro Patron, that's where the Gemini South telescope is, and the Vera Rubin telescope. They're both on the same peak. And so same sky that Deep Sky Chile is looking at. And Cerro Tololo is where there's a pretty big astronomical installation of several observatories on top of that mountain. So it's a pretty active astronomical area. The Deep Sky Chile is at 5,600 feet, so another telescope at a pretty good altitude. And so we have pretty good skies for that location also. And Antoine also has an astrophysics, a 130, a little bit smaller, but super high quality. So a 130, and the big difference is that he's got a full frame camera, a mono camera on the end of that. So here's his equipment, the Astrophysics 130, 10 micron mount as well. and he's got the QHY 600, which is a big full frame 35 millimeter full frame sensor. So big sensor with the filter wheel, and he's got his computer on site also running Nina. So we had Linda set up the Nina parameters on his telescope that were the same as the Texas telescope, so that people going back and forth between the two telescopes wouldn't have to really learn anything new. So we have those two telescopes set up very similarly. And then Antoine, I couldn't handle all of this myself. I said, well, we could do a south telescope, but somebody else is going to have to run it. And so we've got Antoine and another AAA member, Gabriela Levitt, and they're sort of the observatory directors for the South Telescope. And myself and another member, we kind of help run the North Telescope, the one in Texas. So Antoine's good because he knows this is his telescope, so he knows everything on there. He could help doing any kind of troubleshooting that needs to be done. So here's a few images from the South Telescope, and of course there's all sorts of wild objects down there that we can't see from up here, and so it's great to see the images that people are producing from down there. And here's somebody had mentioned the Statue of Liberty. I think that was you, Ken. So we there it is in view of our scope, and you could get your own interpretation. One thing that what we call the telescope operators have been talking about is doing collaborations among the groups. So this is actually an image that was produced by three of the people that they've essentially used. We allot everybody at least 2 days of time on the telescope a month. If we have 10 operators, we figured 2 days of guaranteed time is good because that allows a few extra days for weather and things like that. In reality, some people get busy and they don't use their days, so you can actually have as many as 3 or 4. What a lot of people decided was that we could do collaborations, and so these 3 guys used all of their time on this one project. So instead of having just one night's worth of data and imaging, all of a sudden you've got 3 or 4 additional nights. So you've got a huge data set from this telescope. The files tend to be pretty large, and so doing the actual processing can take a while. But you get very, very deep views of some of these objects. And so it's working out that we could have, I'm not sure what the time frame for this object is, but we've had anywhere from 50 to 70 hours worth of time on one particular object because a group of people have combined their observing times and just photographed one object over a period of a few days. And so that's worked out really good. So one of the things that we really wanted to do with the telescope was to try to do outreach or allow university level students to try to use it for different projects. And so Alfredo Villegas has really spearheaded that movement to do exoplanet research. And he says it's relatively, it's not easy, but it's relatively easy given the advances in things like software, and also that we have these 2 telescopes in pretty dark sites and we could spend a few hours doing imaging on one particular object. And so he said that there's some software. Well, this one is called ExoSpies, and it's run by a group called ExoClock that essentially gathers amateur information from images of exoplanets to add to their database about that particular star. And then usually a university professor will be running the project, gathering all this information, and they'll end up producing papers from this information. So yeah, exoclocks.space is the group. It's a European-based group, and they really have a great program where. Was that a question? And so that they kind of really have it laid out well so that you could, with your telescope, you could do imaging and then contribute to various projects. You could, they have a list of the stars that have possible exoplanets. And so it's sort of this amazing program. ExoWorld Spies, this is the site where you would actually download a lot of that programs and applications that you would use. And that's exoworldspies.com. And so he got very excited because he said there's older software that's very laborious to use, but these people have developed a newer software where you essentially are taking all you're essentially taking a whole maybe a couple hours worth of luminance frames, just the light frames, and then feeding it into the program, and it does all the analysis since you've got the star the potential star already picked out on your in your images. So this is some of the graphs that are produced by the program. I wish Alfredo were here. I don't fully understand all of this, so I can't really explain a lot. But as you can see, the data that you produce will produce this light curve, which of course is very typical of a exoplanet observation, where as the planet passes in front of the sun, the light curve will drop, and then it will go back up as the planet passes past the star. And so he started getting involved with some students, and also with the American Museum of Natural History with some exoplanet research. This one's a little bit hard to read, but this is basically a chart that the program will produce with, if you put in the coordinates of your telescope, it'll show you which stars are available from that location, give you that kind of the parameters of how much time that you need to be exposing, when the star is actually above the horizon, or when it's in a prime position to be photographed. And so that's quite helpful to the projects that you're working on. And here's a printout from a star visible from the southern hemisphere that the Gateway South telescope had imaged. And then so Alfredo then sends me a screenshot. Here's the paper that was finished. Josh Tan is the CUNY professor that is coordinating all these students, and Alfredo's name is is right. Alfredo's name is there, and then Amateur Astronomers Association is at the bottom of the credit list. So this has a September 2025 publication date. So this is a paper that will be coming out soon in the Journal of American Association of Variable Star Observers. And so he's very proud of that work, having worked with a whole group of students. And we're actually trying to keep this going. Every other Friday, they've got a spot on our observing calendar that, pending other members who might want to observe something, the students can use either the North or the South telescope to gather data from certain stars and then work on their own projects. And so we're hoping to try to expand that in the future to more students and make more use out of doing research with the two telescopes that we have. So now, how do you join our Gateway telescope? And these are the tier levels that we have set up. We have 3 basic tier levels. We might reduce that to 2 in the next year, but so far we have 3. And after looking around at a lot of the online remote telescopes and the prices that they charge, we feel that these are pretty low prices. We essentially, again, we kind of wanted to have just a sustaining program where we paid for ourselves. We didn't really need to make any money from it. The very first year, I was kind of shocked. We ended up in the black. We actually ended up slightly making money if you just totaled up the fees that we paid for the peer rental plus the equipment, and then also and then it countered that against the income that we had from the both subscriptions, and we had several good large donations to our project. After we got the word out, people were interested in supporting the project that weren't really, they said, well, they didn't have the expertise, but they wanted to support it. So part of our what Preston Staley and I were doing was trying to attract people to donate money directly to the Gateway project, so that we can keep programs like this running. So if you wanted to join, we actually initially had different names for the tier levels. We renamed them, but the supernova level is the operator level. So you're allowed to operate the telescope. So you can go on it, you can pick the target, you can pick the exposure, you can pick the filters, you could point it anywhere you want. And so if you join for either the North or the South telescope, one telescope, that's $500. We did a little package if you could be an operator on both telescopes if you want for $850. So you get a price break if you do both. And the operators are quite busy, half doing the imaging, and there's troubleshooting as well. But people kind of they chip in and help with any problems. One thing that we started up, which was a great suggestion by one of the members, was we use Discord as the messaging service. And if you haven't heard of Discord, it's basically just a standalone messaging service that you could also set up a lot of different channels that are specific to different things that you need to do. We have an operators channel where just the operators are on it, and they use it to communicate between and among themselves, which is a really good idea. If there's any problem, a lot of times a frequent message I see is that the mount is stuck or the mount won't turn on. How do I reboot? How do I turn this on? And then somebody will see the message and come on and say, well, let me help. Let me log on to Nina and see if I could help. So there's a lot of help that way. And then a lot of suggestions. We're undergoing, one member is really helping with the data management. We've got a huge amount of data, and we're just trying to organize it so that people have easy access to it. And he's been instrumental in getting everything in good shape. The second tier level we used to call target selector. It's called Galaxy now, and that you can select a target, a couple, 2 or 3 targets, or 1 or 2 targets a month, and that the operators then will spend one of their nights photographing that target, or part of a night photographing the target that you select, and so that you could contribute to the project that way. And the third tier is called Nebula, and that used to be called Data Subscriber. And so for $30 a month, or $50 if you want to join both, you could have access to all of the data. And so every tier level has access to all the data that is produced through the Gateway project.
Month?
A month.
Were the other prices monthly as well?
All the prices are monthly prices. I'm sorry, these are per year. I'm sorry.
Right.
Sorry, those at home, these are the prices per year. And so for $30 or $50 a year, you can have access to all of the data. And so we wanted to have it so that every tier level could access all of the data, and so it works out that way. Also, there's also the cerebellum data that's accessible by everybody. And so so our really the idea kind of grew from this a basic idea that we had no idea what the end result was going to be, to all of a sudden we over a period of probably just over a year and a half, we have 2 telescopes. We've got a telescope in the northern hemisphere and a telescope in the southern hemisphere, and I think all of us are pretty surprised. And it's great when somebody posts images of the finished object that either they've photographed or they've seen the data and they wanted to put together their own interpretation of that particular data set. And so It's really great. If you have any questions, I could try to answer them here, or you could just send me an email. To actually join the Gateway Telescope, you do have to be a AAA member. That's $45 a year, so the actual cost isn't too much. We've managed to attract members from all around the country, which is we hadn't expected that. And there's probably about 6 or 7 people from not that aren't in the New York City area, and a few of them actually were just typing in remote telescope into a Google search, and our Gateway Telescope showed up. It was really when we first started, and because I had asked them, well, how did you find us? Because there's a fellow from Cincinnati joined, and somebody from Chicago, and a couple people from Arizona, and I was kind of shocked. And then some people knew people in other clubs. They said, "Oh, these guys, the AAA, have this remote telescope." So it was a little bit word of mouth, and so it's kind of fun to have people in different parts of the country, because some people also work on other remote telescopes. They wanted to see what we have, and they were. I think the instrumentation we have is super high quality. So both rigs, I think, are very high end, and have been producing really amazing pictures, as you could see. And I encourage you to go on the Gateway Gallery to see more pictures. And otherwise, I could take any questions, and if I could answer them, I'll try to do that.